understand. There's 3 or 4 that you could say some good things about. But by and large, most have condemned themselves for their own faithfulness and their own greediness. Here's the bad thing. Here's the sad thing. When Ahab said to Jehoshaphat, "But I hate him, because he does not speak good concerning me, but evil." Jehoshaphat, instead of defending Micaiah, and instead of standing up for the one true and living God, just simply gave a mild rebuff and said, "Let not the king say so." What? Let not the king say so. Do you realize, according to the Bible in Psalm 50, verses 16 through 18, that silence is not only consent, it's also betrayal as well? Isn't that interesting? Ahab, at the request of Jehoshaphat, said, "I'll get you a prophet of the Lord." And he told his men, "Hasten ye Micaiah and bring him hither." Here's a good question. How did he know where Micaiah was? Read the scripture, you'll find many times the prophets of the Lord were carried hither and yon. How did he know where he was? Well, here's the answer to that. You'll find it in 1 Kings 22, and I ever read it, verses 26 and 27. After Micaiah gave him the word, then the king of Israel said, "Take Micaiah and carry him back unto Ammon the governor of the city, and to Joash the king's son, and say, Thus said the king, put this fellow into prison and feed him with the bread of affliction and water of affliction till I come in peace." He knew where Micaiah was because he had him in prison. He knew exactly where he was. So when he sent for him, all the men said to Micaiah, "Now let your word be as all these other prophets, because they're speaking good concerning Ahab and his desire to go to Ramoth-Gilead." Micaiah said, "I can only say what the Lord will allow me to say." So here's something. Listen to this. When Micaiah got in the presence of Ahab, Ahab asked, "Shall I go to Ramoth-Gilead or shall I forbear?" And Micaiah sarcastically said, "Go up and prosper. Go up and prosper." And he said it in such a way that Ahab knew that it was a mockery and an insult. And he said, "How many times must I adjure you to tell me nothing but the truth in the name of the Lord?" Wow. Micaiah mocks him. Was Micaiah wrong for mocking Ahab? Oh no. Let me tell you something. There's a difference between the office of authority and the pervert or the dishonorable man who is in that office. You'll find the same thing happen to Elisha. When Jehoram, who happened to be the son of Ahab, along with the king Jehoshaphat and the king of Moab, were going up, or the king of Edom, going up against the Moabites. When it looked as if they were all going to perish for lack of water, they came to Elisha. And you know what Elisha said? Listen to this. And Elisha said unto the king of Israel, "What have I to do with thee? Give thee to the prophets of thy father and to the prophets of thy mother." And the king of Israel said, "Nay, but the Lord hath called these 3 kings together to deliver them into the hand of Moab." And Elisha said, "As the Lord God liveth before whom I stand, surely if it were not for the presence of Jehoshaphat, I would not see thee, nor look toward thee." Let me just spell that out for you. In good old South Georgia language, here is exactly what Elisha said. "I wouldn't spit on you if you were on fire." You're a reprobate. You're a pervert. That's what he said. So when Ahab said to Micaiah, "How many times must I adjure thee to tell me nothing but the truth in the name of the Lord?" I could hear Micaiah right now saying, "You want the truth? You can't handle the truth. Here's the truth, Ahab. God's going to kill you. God is getting you up to Ramoth-Gilead so that you will die. And he sent a lying spirit in the mouth of all these false prophets of yours just to lure you up there. You're going to die." Ahab didn't like that at all. So he says, take this man back, and you feed him with the bread of affliction, the water of affliction, until I return in peace. And what did Micaiah say? If you return it all in peace, and the Lord has not spoken by me. Now I've given you all this Bible history just to give you one point tonight. I want you to think about this. In 1 Kings 22 and verse 8, Ahab said, there's one man left, but I hate him, because he doth not always prophesy good concerning me, but evil. So here's the point. Listen carefully. It was one man, and one man only, that spoke the truth and that ended the tyranny and the wickedness of Ahab and his government. Ahab was right about one thing. He said, there is one man here. And I can tell you right now, Micaiah was indeed a man. He was a fighter. He was a champion of the cause. In fact, the Hebrew word for man here means not just simply a man as distinguished from woman, but it also means a champion. It means a servant. In fact, Micaiah's name literally means who is like God. He was a servant of the Most High God, and he was a fighter, and he was a champion. And when Ahab said there is yet one man, the emphasis is on the number one. There's only one left. Now I want you to think about this. Micaiah was a singular man. He was alone, and he stood alone, and he stood for truth and righteousness. He was there when no one else could stand. Everyone else had either been killed or imprisoned or expelled. He was kind of like John the Baptist. I love that passage in John 1 and verse 6 where God looks at John the Baptist and said, there was a man. And so Micaiah was indeed a man. He was a man that was willing to forsake all for the cause, and he was willing basically to walk away from everything. Do you understand that one of our problems today, even as men of the South, even as sons of Confederate veterans, stop and think about this. Most of the time, we had rather be country club Confederates. What do I mean by that? Well, if we're members of the country club in that sense of the word, we get to play. We don't have to stand. We don't have to fight. And we've become basically too materialistic. We tend to think that it's things that make us happy. It's things that complete us and make us successful. The truth of the matter is this, folks, we brought nothing into this world and we ain't carrying nothing out. Life is more than raiment. Life is more than food. Life is more than things. Micaiah certainly understood that. Here was a man who was willing to stand for truth even if he was in prison for his faith. Please understand this. Prison holds no stigma if you're in prison for the right reason. May I remind you that John the Baptist was put in prison. Our Lord was arrested. All of the disciples and the apostles were eventually arrested. Even the apostle Paul was arrested so many times. Finally, he said in 2 Timothy 1 and verse 8 to Timothy, be not thou therefore ashamed of the testimony of our Lord, nor of me his prisoner, but be thou partaker of the gospel. Paul was a prisoner. Our Confederate soldiers were prisoners. Think about Elmira. Think about Point Lookout. Here, these men were imprisoned, starved, shot, deliberately malnourished. Look at the 600 on Marsh Island. There is no stigma to being in prison as long as you're there for the right reason. And our Confederate ancestors were in prison because of truth and honor and liberty and freedom. You have to understand that Micaiah was willing to suffer. He spoke the truth even though he was fed with the bread and water of affliction. When I think about Micaiah, I think about Nathan Bedford Forrest. Nathan Bedford Forrest, and I've got several messages on Forrest, but Nathan Bedford Forrest was not just a colorful individual. He was an individual, when he spoke, you didn't have to wonder what he said. He didn't have to explain it a second time. And it is true, before his conversion, he oftentimes emphasized his sentences with a lot of expletives. That is true. But when he spoke, you knew exactly what he said and exactly what he meant. Now I want you to listen carefully. There was a man. I want you to think. There is one man. Will you concentrate on the word one? And will you concentrate on the word man? I'm going to say something before I close, but I'm going to say it right now. You've heard the old adage that God and one man make a majority. That's really not true. God is a majority in and of himself. He doesn't even need a man. But the truth is that God does use men. And here he used Micaiah. It would behoove us to listen to the words of Robert L. Dabney. Robert L. Dabney was not only an eminent theologian and a scholar, he happened to be chief of staff to Stonewall Jackson. In his commencement address to the students at Hampton Sidney College in Virginia on June the 15th, 1882, he made these remarks. Listen carefully to what he said. It behooves the New South, in dismissing the animosities of the past, to see to it that they retain all that was true in its principles and in its ennobling cause. There are those pretending to be in this company who exclaim, "Let us bury the dead past. Its issues are all antiquated." Is that not what they're saying today? Its issues are all antiquated and no more practical significance. Let us forget the passions of the past. We're in a new world. It's new questions alone that concern us. I reply, be sure that the former issues are dead before you really bury them. There are issues that cannot die without the death of the people, of their honor, their civilization, their greatness. Take care that you do not bury too much while burying the dead past, that you do not bury the inspiring memories of the great patriots whose actions, whether successful or not, are the eternal glory of your race and section, the influence of their virtues, the guiding precedents of their histories. Will you bury the names and memories of a Jackson and a Lee and their noble army of martyrs? Will you bury true history whose years are those of the God of truth? What are they saying? The past is over. No, the past is not over. Let me tell you, the principles which we are facing today and the principles upon which we are fighting today are exactly the same principles over which our forefathers fought in 1776 and in 1861 to 1865. Exactly the same. You can't bury the past. And you can't bury the principles of the past. Principles do not have funerals. Principles do not die. I want you to understand that the Christian cause and the Southern cause are all rolled into one. And here's our problem today. We don't have men. We do not have men. We do not have men that are fearless and unafraid. We do not have men that will stand and speak the truth and let the chips fall where they may. We do not have men that are willing to sacrifice. We do not have men like Lee and Jackson and Stewart and Ewell. Where are they? Can you imagine? Can you imagine what it would be like if we had one Robert E. Lee in the United States Congress? Or one Stonewall Jackson in a state assembly? Can you imagine? Lee's words ring true in our ears today. He said this: our country demands all our strength, all our energies. To resist the powerful combination now forming against us will require every man in his place. If victorious, we have everything to hope for in the future. If defeated, nothing will be left for us to live for. My whole trust is in God, and I'm ready to do whatever He may ordain. At present, I'm not concerned with results. God's will ought to be our aim, and I'm quite contented that His design should be accomplished and not mine. Now listen, the truth is, the march of providence is so slow, and our desires so impatient, The work of progress is so immense, and our means of aiding it so feeble. The life of humanity is so long, and that of the individual is so brief, that we often see only the ebb of the advancing wave and are thus discouraged. We must expect reverses, even defeats. They are sent to teach us wisdom and prudence, and to call forth greater energies, and to prevent our falling into greater disasters. It is history that teaches us to hope. What did he say? We are just watching the little ebb and flow. We can't see the whole wave. We can't see the entire ocean. But what Lee is saying is God has everything under control. There was one northerner, even a Yankee, and I'm using that particularly because he was an officer in the Union Army, who said something that I absolutely, totally agree with 100%. Here is what he said. It was E. Benjamin Andrews, the president of Brown University, himself a veteran of the Yankee Army, 130 years ago said, the question of greatness is a relative thing, and we in America will probably always differ as to the rank of our prominent men. But if any American father were asked which of our great men he would most want his son to resemble, that father, if he were wise, would be compelled to answer, Robert E. Lee. Isn't that amazing? Here's the Union officer saying, if anybody has one eye and half sense in this country that want their son to emulate